joining us is international affairs analyst Professor Jidofo Adibe. Thank you very much for joining us on Newsnight. You know, we could spend all night talking about the over 3-decade-old conflict or crisis in the DRC.
Yep.
What really would you say is at the heart of this? Is it about the mineral wealth in the region? Is that what this is all about at the end of the day? And do you think this peace mission by Obasanjo, Haile Mariam, and of course Uhuru Kenyatta will, yield any positive results?
First of all, we would like it to work. But it's important to also remember that before now we've had the one from Nairobi, which failed. And then there was the one from Angola, which held only briefly. As to the question of whether it's about the mineral resources, it is one of the reasons because it has helped to globalize the conflict. But the history, you have to look at the root from the 1994 genocide in Rwanda. The Rwandan Patriotic Front, which won with the help of Yoweri Museveni in Uganda, when they won in 1994, some of the Hutu militants crossed over to the neighboring Rwanda, neighboring Congo. And then they stayed in a place called Kivu, in the eastern part of the country. The same place, they also have a sizable number of the Tutsis. Remember, Paul Kagame himself is a Tutsi.
Yeah.
So what happened at that point that there were intermittent flays of, fights, because the hardline Hutus, they decided to form an insurgency group. But over the years, this has, evolved into what I can call militarism on the part of Paul Kagame. If you ask me, you cannot discuss the conflicts in Rwanda without really laying the blame. For example, because Mobutu Sese Seko, who was the prime president at that time.
When it was Zaire.
Yeah, when it was Zaire, was thought to be supporting the Hutus. Rwanda attacked. That was the first Congolese war between 1996 and 1997. And then when Mobutu Sese Seko fled, you had the Laurent Kabila, who was one of the opposition figures, supported again by the same Paul Kagame. He came to power. By 1998, they had fallen out. They fallen out led to the extent that Laurent Kabila said, okay, all foreign troops in Congo, leave. And because he made that order, the next time is that Kagame attacked. His argument was that Laurent Kabila had not shown sufficient will, to contain the Hutu militants in the border, and that he wanted to create a buffer. That second Congolese war cost at least 6 million lives. Remember, only 1 million, I'm not saying only, it's the human lives.
Rwanda.
Yes, 6 million people. That was said to be one of the most atrocious things since the Second World War. And then you think that was the end of it. After that Second War, after this man left and the son took over, there was still intermittent. He started to arm several Tutsi groups, which came in the early 2000s was this March 23 movement. Yeah. And it got to a point that the M23 movement was even fighting the Congolese government, and the United Nations in 2013 formed what they call MONUSCO, one of the few instances where they were allowed to fight for the territorial integrity of a country. They actually fought. And African Union took the position indirectly condemning Rwanda, talking about respecting the territorial integrity of a country. Of course, it's not only the Tutsi militants, you also have Hutu militants. And because of that, they were being backed by the various foreign forces, including the Chinese. China supplies the drones, used by Congolese government to fight the Tutsis, and at the same time selling arms to Uganda, which is a major backer of, the Tutsis. So it's a very complex.
It's a complex, intractable.
Between from that time till March, October 2024, you had 7.2 million people displaced.
Yeah.
That is the highest, second highest in Africa.
Great. I mean, thank you for laying that foundation. The EU just yesterday on Monday, suspended its defense pact with Rwanda.
Yeah.
The UK has announced that it will soon impose sanctions over allegations that Rwanda is backing the M23 rebels. But you know, Kigali has constantly denied those allegations. But I wonder, with all of these sanctions coming into place, do you think that would shift the needle in this crisis with the backing of M23, who have now had 2 strong regions under their hold? And the ICC prosecutor is also on ground. He arrived Monday night as well, the prosecutor. He says he's coming to investigate and is promising justice. How much will all of this effort, in your own professional opinion, change things?
The same thing was said during the second Congolese war, that several instances of war crimes were reported. And people, it's easy for Rwanda to deny. These are a Tutsi government. I mean, the militia group, M23, mostly the Tutsis. And Kagame is Tutsi. And all along, since 1994, he has constantly been supporting the Tutsi movements. So the good thing that is going to come out of this is that people are going to now put spotlight. For a long time, many people hold him as a model of a country, a model of a leader that was able to put together a country that came out of a very sad situation. Now, the question is, given that in identity studies, that's what we say, that an identity that is perceived to be under threat is the one that is most vociferously defended. Now, if you're a Hutu inside Rwanda, because if you go to Rwanda now, nobody wants to talk about their ethnic identity.
Of course.
So you now ask yourself, is it, a piece of the graveyard? Or is something really boiling within the, people say,
the calm before the
storm. Is something happening? Because since 1994, constantly, you see, you suffered, and how many people have died on the other side? I'm not saying that the Hutu militants are not to be blamed, but if you are a leader where the people from your country, you have the Tutsis, you have the Hutus, and you knew what happened in 1994, and you have been in power, you're a minority for over 30 years, it behoves on you to show a little more of neutrality, a little more. This idea of being militaristic, it's uncalled for. Don't forget that in 2015, Burundi accused the Paul Kagame of engineering a failed coup in the country.
Let's talk about other efforts being made by President Tshisekedi. For instance, he's talking about Joseph Kabila, Moise Katumbi, and Martin Fayulu forming a government of unity with his administration. You know that these have been opposition leaders, very vocal critics of the administration. In fact, they blame bad governance for the insecurity on the ground. Do you think they would be accepting that olive branch to form that government of national unity, and what impact will it have?
I'm not sure the idea of government of national unity, it really works.
Yeah.
When people who have been fighting and all this, it hasn't really worked very well if you go to our history. But we just hope that whatever can bring peace, as we speak, about 1.1 million Congolese are looking for refuge outside the country. And the International Office of United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees has launched a 40.1 million appeal fund just to be able to contain over 275,000 people they are expecting. And
not to talk of the 7,000 that have lost their
lives.
lives.
As many as over 25 million are facing food insecurity, the highest in the world. So whatever can be done, to contain the crisis, the humanitarian crisis in that country, it's something that should be, looked into now. In fact,
so back to the first question.
The Norwegian Red Cross just said that it is the most neglected crisis in the world.
I wonder if that's before Sudan or after Sudan, because there's Sudan as well.
Sudan has the highest refugee. I mean, in terms of displacement.
Humanitarian crisis,
displacement in terms because they had 11 million people displaced. But in terms of humanitarian, in terms of the number of people facing food insecurity, in the number of people that are, displaced. Look at what happened in Goma. 400,000 people just within a space of this thing, either killed or maimed.
So what's the way forward now that former President Olusegun Obasanjo, former presidents, then Ethiopian Desalegn, Kenya's Uhuru Kenyatta, have been appointed to facilitate a way forward? What do you think would be that way forward? Really?
Well, Obasanjo continues to be a highly respected international statesman, whatever we may think of him in this country. And whether they will be able to achieve anything, I'm not sure.
What will they need to do to achieve anything?
I think what is going to happen now is that all this halo of a good leader that Kagame had enjoyed, just now come under spotlight as a militarist. That is, militarism and military adventurism has to be contained. And personally, if you ask me, for as long as Kagame is in power in that country, and given the nature of changing alliances in that region, it's going to be very difficult.
Well, they're not the three wise men from the east, but they are wise men on the continent, all the same, elder statesmen in their own rights.
And we as Nigerians, we should be proud that whenever crisis
definitely.
erupts,
We do hope that
Obasanjo will be.
And he does know the terrain. They've all had something to do in that region at one point or the other, being called upon. We watch the space and hope that, you know, some peace comes to Democratic Republic of Congo. Thank you so much, International Affairs Analyst Professor Jide for Adibe, for sharing your insights on that matter.
Yeah, thank you very much.